So y'all are right on time. I wonder, is everybody okay if we wait about 5 minutes for there are a couple confirmation kids. We had this kind of as a double that way. Maybe like a 6:05 start? Generally okay? Okay. Still, we should be able to be done by about 7. I think that's what everybody was banking on. Not that you're in a hurry. I know it's Packers bye week, so that's good. Just one more minute, and we'll also get you prepped. Early on, I'll be asking for one volunteer to come up to kind of give a demonstration of how to map out the passions. So, screw up your courage a little bit and see if there's anybody who wants to be. It's painless. It won't be. I wonder, just for context, can I see show of hands? Is there anybody here who's not Catholic? This is okay, gotcha. Just wanted to get a sense for that because there's something neat with how the passions are laid out. The point of this would be to make it kind of accessible for anybody who's outside the Catholic faith tradition. So just kind of wanted a sense there, so thank you for your feedback. 6:05 So we're ready to begin. Let's start by just taking a moment, offering up whatever prayer, word that we would have, whatever way we can be to get in touch with ourselves and get in touch with a receptivity to kind of what we experienced tonight. Okay. So again, the idea here will be, keep you on a schedule, but also hopefully have something that can be beneficial for tonight. I'm thankful for y'all coming out. Because Advent, so just to start us off, Advent's a time of waiting. We're in this period between, end of Thanksgiving, Christmas. It's kind of the in-between time, and we've got this season of Advent that helps us cultivate this skill of waiting. We have the chance to develop it every year, and when we wait, it's natural to get antsy. I think you might experience that, to want to move. Catholics, we believe God's made us to move, walk a path toward sainthood, towards the fullest version of ourselves. And the whole idea is that we're moved from where we are to the best place that we can be. That's what our life journey is about. That's what moving on is like. And so tonight we're going to talk about a piece of that movement. It's appropriate in this season of waiting and at a level that we can all experience even now, right now. And that's the passions. We'll be relying on what St. Thomas Aquinas, the Dominican friar, doctor of the church from about 700 years ago, used, how he described it. And we'll be leaning on, particularly interested in, how they can be used, these passions that we all experience, to open us up to the movement of something beyond us. We'd say God, and the movement that he wants to effect in us. Use them with his help as an engine to what we call beatitude. Blessedness. Luckiness is another word. Happiness. We'll start by just listing the passions. Set some of the parameters for the conversation. We'll apply them, flesh them out a little more. That'll be our volunteer thing. Then we'll finally open things up for just anything on your mind. Question and answer, discussion. I think that could be fruitful with a wide range of life experience here. And probably wrap by 7. So just listing them, we'll start out. There are 11 of them. You don't need there won't be a quiz, but just to kind of give you the parameters, it'll be helpful. 10 of the 11 come in pairs. And we'll start with desire and aversion. I think desire, to start off, makes sense to us. A desire for a taste, an appetite to be filled in this or that way. We respond to desire. We go after it. The opposite's aversion, where something moves us and we want to turn from it, not toward it. So we've got these two, just to start us off. Things we desire. We can give you 2 more. Things we desire, we love. This is love as a passion, meant specifically. And its opposite is hate. Not a vicious hate, something that's problematic. We're just describing the thing that causes aversion. Love causes desire. Hate causes aversion. And one more pair, joy and sorrow. So there's the one track, we love something, we desire it, we get it, and we end up in joy. And then there are a couple paths to take to get to sorrow. You can hate something and try to avoid it and fail. You don't avoid it and you have sorrow being in that situation. Or you love something, but you can't get it, and sorrow's there too. So, hey, we've got 6 down. So good progress. 5 others. These are a little different. Some of the things we love and desire are hard to get. And then some of the things that we hate or averse to, those are hard to avoid. And this is where these other passions come in. First one is hope. We hope to attain things that we love, even if they're difficult to get. That's another one. On the other hand, we can experience despair. We despair that we won't get something we love, or we despair at avoiding a difficult evil. And then following hope, we can experience what's called daring. So we hope for something and we dare to engage in pursuit of a difficult good, or avoiding a difficult evil, or, on the other hand, fear that we'd fall short in getting something. So we hope for something, and we either dare for it or we fear that we won't, that we'd fall short of getting something we love or avoiding a difficult evil. So that's 10. Just one more. I know it's hard work for a Sunday night in Advent, but just the last one. Anger. This one's complicated. It's mixed. You'll notice all the passions in the second group we just described are a little harder and grasping at words a little bit because they're of a different kind. Properly speaking, they're all like anger. Ira in Latin. It's a weird thing that anger, speaking broadly, so note this, it's not like these passions, it's the other way around, that these passions are like anger in one sense. They're called the irascible passions. We'll give you now a Summa Theologiae reference. So in Prima Secundae 45:6, reply to the second objection. As a Dominican, that's a kind of thing, just one of those. We like to do that. Thomas Aquinas, he calls anger something caused by injury. So we're injured in this or that or the other way. And often enough, our reason, our observational skills, it says there's something wrong with this injury we've suffered. We're injured. It stirs up sometimes something ordered toward justice, toward righting a wrong. It's our reason that says, I shouldn't have been injured in this way. It was unjust, and stirs up a passion for righting that. I think that should kind of resonate with us. That makes sense. So the first set of passions, that's all of them. So the first set of passions we treated, the first 6, those are called concupiscible. Try to say that a few times fast. Those respond by turning aside from evil. So they go after good things, they avoid evil things. The second set, the irascible, they're able to engage evil head on. They give us hope that there's more to do in the face of evil than just flee. There's a way to fight too. And these passions arise to prompt us to try to act out of them, to dare and hope, and act while trying to effect some change. And the change, if it's accomplished, it allows us to end in joy. So now we've got them: love, hate, desire, aversion, joy, sorrow, hope, despair, daring, fear, and anger. So again, we don't have to retain that, but just to give the context for a bit of dialogue, make sure we're all on the same page. Could be one of the confirmation group, but I need one volunteer who's willing to share something they really love and something they really hate. Kind of give examples. So I'll just wait for a hand and go with the first one. I'm watching. Hey, there we go, in the back. Is that, who's that? Is that Linus back there? All right, Linus, come on up. Can we get you? Oh, I'm sorry. I can't hear him.
I like Doritos.
Oh, sorry. Can I actually get you up to the front?
Sure.
It'll be very clear that way. But he said, for everybody who couldn't hear, he likes Doritos. He has, properly speaking, a love for Doritos. Okay. So we'll have you, we can even have you, let's see, what's the best way? That's right there. That's perfect. Just so I can see and hear you a little better. So you love Doritos, right?
I don't like vacuuming the stairs.
Vacuuming the stairs. Okay. So this is the stairs at home, specifically. Not any stairs. Just okay. So like specifically vacuuming the stairs at home. So let's start with the Doritos. So you would say you love Doritos. That's what we've started there. So there's also a desire that you experience sometimes for Doritos. You know what that's like, yeah? And then when that desire is fulfilled, so like you love your Doritos, you desire them, now you have your Doritos. Would you describe a kind of joy that comes from that?
Happiness.
Yes, there we go, happiness. So you know that track. That's a good track right there, where you love Doritos, you desire them, and you get joy from them. And so now, kind of a situation where, have you ever experienced, what if there's a time where, like, you love these Doritos and you want them, but you have to do something, difficult to attain them? Maybe something even like vacuuming the stairs. Would
I try to go as fast as I can.
But it sounds like you'd be willing sometimes like to do that thing. So so that would be kind of an example of even like with this obstacle of vacuuming the stairs, you're still hoping for Doritos, right? And it seems like you're even willing to dare to vacuum the stairs to get these Doritos. And then there's a joy that comes from that. So we just saw Linus kind of lay out, even the exercise of these irascible passions, along with these other we kind of get a good map there. But now let's stick, but it sounds like you'd be willing to like vacuum the stairs, like to get Doritos. What's something that's, what's something you really don't like? It sounds like even more than that. Yeah, we need something more. Wow. Well, maybe Linus has taken us about as far as we can. Thank you, Linus, for you laying that out. You can go back. Can we maybe we need one more. Yes. He's a very equitable kid. He doesn't have something that he really doesn't like. We need to have something we really don't like for the second half of the example to work. So can I get somebody who's willing to share something that they really have this, yes, is that Molly right there? Can we get you to come up? Is that okay? Something that you really strong aversion to. Excellent. Snakes. Wow. Okay. There we go. Now we're cooking with gas. This is good. So, just in terms of like general, if a snake was right here, what would be you're gone? Okay. Okay. This is exactly what I'm looking for. This is good. But what if would you like leave the idea is leave the church? Okay. So your route is probably like through those doors over there. But this is where, there are a lot of Dominicans who live here. So I'm saying, what if, so like Father Andy, let's say I'm here, I have a snake, and you're like, well, no, I'm going that way. But Brother Ed's over there, and he's got snakes at both the doors. So you can't get out that way. What's the plan now? You're okay. You're like, no, back in, and you go. But Brother Jordan over there, he's got snakes there. Are you still, what are we doing here? You're the fetal. There. Okay, so now we've reached, because so we can kind of run through these where you have a hatred for snakes. Truly, there's a true hatred, and it triggers an aversion. You're saying away from the snakes, and the irascible passions were triggered where you did hope to escape them, and the hope was, well, if I go through that door, I'm going to flee from these snakes. But you found, that doesn't work. But then you came back, and there was a daring, kind of, where this daring is even, I am going to strive really to avoid this evil. But when we get to the fetal position, we kind of see where the other half of these is triggered, where there's no longer the hope to avoid the snakes. You didn't flee, you didn't try for that door because it seemed like you might be thinking it seems like the Dominicans are all over the place with these snakes. It seems there is no more hope. And so there is no hope. There is a fear that you will not avoid successfully these snakes, and there is a sorrow that ends in. Does this all sound right? And then just so we kind of have a sense, there's a sense in which it's a kind of anger that triggers that triggers the ability to kind of move from these things, the aversion, and then the willingness to try to overcome these obstacles. Does this all kind of make sense, this track? Thank you for sharing that. That was an excellent example. Cool. All right. So we've gone more or less through the tree. We kind of see, so it's not just that they're, abstract. We've now seen them more concretely applied with, excellent examples. There are loads of other variations, but you generally get the idea. These are the pieces. We'll say there are a couple other things that Thomas Aquinas says that maybe it'll be helpful just to, grab onto these, that we're passive regarding them in a particular sense. What he means is that we can't get away from experiencing these things. Not everyone experiences the same things as strongly as what everybody. I don't have such a strong aversion to snakes. I don't have such a strong affection for Doritos. But these experiences of love, hate, desire, they act on us. So you look around this church, everybody experiences these things. It's something we share. And they're rooted also in external things. It's something outside us that gives rise to these experiences within us. There's also grades of these things. So Aquinas treats these in more detail than I will tonight, but with anger, for instance, there's irritation, annoyance, wrath, rage. Fear, there's reticence, timidity, fear, and fright. So a different thing. You can see how they can get complicated, especially when they interact, different things going on at the same time. But it's still helpful. And why? Because all of this informs our reason, gives our reason more tools to use. We can diagnose some of these things a little better. And during an Advent season where it's appropriate to get in touch with these gut reactions, it's a time of waiting. We sit. We can get in touch with the things that affect us, that move us. It lets us have a more concrete sense that every time I choose against the good, every time I give free rein to like a little passion that can be harmful, so I'm that can be more easily controlled, I'm compromising my ability to keep myself from being steered by bigger passions. So the passions themselves are not bad, but there's a way, obviously that a desire for Doritos is not an ordering function. That's no way to live one's life with that at the center. That makes sense. There's a way that our different passions can be out of order, that they can drive us this way or that way. It's unhelpful. It can sometimes even feel like we're about powerless in the grip of this or that or the other one. But we're also hearing about this. That's another thing Aquinas says, is that we are not powerless. We are not powerless. We're not under their control. There are some circumstances where we're in fact overwhelmed by them. So angry, for example, that overwhelmed, we literally can't control what we do, but that's rare. That's not what happens normally. Not going along with the passions is hard, for sure. We might hear people talk about, or we talk about, how hard it is. You made me sad, right? You made me angry. Even a reference Taylor Swift not too many years ago. You might know what I'm about to say. Look what you made me do. Is she saying something? Silly example, but is she saying something other than, you made me experience this passion, and when I experience it, I don't have so much control over how I act? Something other than that. We might be in that boat sometimes, where we look back at this or that decision and say, how did that happen? We're moved by a passion in some way. But most of the time, this is what we want to note, there's something in the will that says, go along with that feeling. Go along with this. And that is good news, because even if it's a passion we don't want, there is an alternative, and the alternative is not going along with that. That's a choice we can make. Now, last thing, I'm not sure exactly what the broad field of psychology would say to Aquinas' account, strictly, and what I'm saying is that, psychology, social sciences generally, aren't so comfortable with like a strict taxonomy, a strict organization. In other places, like physics, people go after Aquinas and they'll say, he was using the science of the day. They dismiss what he says is outdated. And there's some truth to that, where we can't just take what he says without understanding the context. That's a good way to misunderstand him. But this is where people are too ready often to throw things out. If someone here was in psychology and wanted to use this stuff, they'd have to spend some time mapping out how his understanding tracks with contemporary developments. So there'd be some work there. But I do think that somebody in psychology, if they really knew him, they'd be impressed by what they find. And at the very least, I think he would say, Aquinas would, come up with something better if you can, but I think what I have here is pretty good. That it accounts for some things. It explains them efficiently in a helpful way, and I think he's right. So now we'll start to put the rubber to the road a little more. I'll pick one example that has, I think, a really good chance of being relevant. I'm absolutely certain there are people in the church who struggle with overuse of technology, smartphones, social media. I think we can be in this boat. It makes sense, fitting also around Advent, Christmas. Might be that a lot of us got these things for the first time after a wait during this Advent season, Christmas around the corner. Makes sense. It would be given at a time of gift giving, because The goods are pretty clear. Communication, interaction, internet and everything good there, convenience. There's a lot to love. Now I'm speaking the language of the passions. And using this thing can build up a kind of desire to continue to use it, culminating in a joy, a satisfaction where that desire is satisfied. And hey, all good news, that's the good set. Love, desire, joy, we like these. But I wonder if we felt, when we need to put this thing down, do we know that feeling? And how that drawing away is more difficult than the joyful cycle. It's less pleasant. And I think this is where we can start to see a picture of the passions running away with us. This is by design, by the way. Maybe you've heard about how, tech companies, a lot of these, responsible for the different pieces of that experience, that these devices are designed to be pleasurable to engage. But that, a lot of the folks who designed these impose very strict limits with regard to themselves with them and insist on the same thing with their kids. Maybe we figured that out about internet use, social media. People have come to hate it in the way we mean, a mixed one, not viciously, again, but just that it's something to be resisted, like limitless use of this stuff. Averse, in some ways, hoping to overcome it, striving to dare to overcome it. Angry, maybe with oneself, to spend 30, 60 more minutes scrolling, sorrowful when that happens. And now we can kind of see the passions at war with each other. It's a mixture, where one desires the pleasure, the medication of jumping into something like that. And there's conflict, where a part says, no, I want to run away from this. And the stronger part wants it, though, desires it, strong arms the will to go along, and so there's a fleeting, momentary joy when that happens, but then a sorrow maybe kicks in. That's a version of what all the warring passions look like. Any kind of desires like that. Food, drink, any media, other desires I won't bring up in a family setting, but I think you know what I mean. Just throw this in, the people who sell any of this stuff, and this is an uncomfortable question. How many of those bank on, profit from us, people like us being unable to tap into this control over our passions? Believe it or not, this points to a way out, a way through. So not to impose something here, but to propose something I think a lot of us would be interested in. But the one who made the universe sees our struggles, sees this. This one who made the universe, a community of persons, understanding the desire, struggle of persons, intimately involved with all the universes going on, intent on helping us, speaking to our most inmost being to bring us out. And these passions are part of our inmost being. Things that can sometimes run away with us, they can be harnessed, be brought under rein to help us unlock our full potential. Even though a lot of us here are religious, our society is less and less religious, much less so. But we still are all about freedom and happiness. It's pretty clear a lot of people are bound by the things we're talking about. Full freedom is what we want. Holding out a path to full freedom, very attractive. And I think that's a way into it in passion's language, that everybody loves, has a desire for freedom. Beatitude is another way. Happiness. Happiness. Loves, hopes, dares for it, rejoices in it. And so what if the passions that we just described could be stirred up to love those good things more than anything else? Again, I think fitting during this Advent season as we're waiting for Christmas. Plenty of pressures, anxieties for anybody during the holiday season. It's not all, not sunshine and rainbows, that's the other time of the year, but snowflakes and Christmas lights, it's not just that. Plenty of things still, pressures, anxieties that rile us up. So how to wrangle these things and find a way to use them to get in touch with someone behind all reality that wants us not to be addled, distracted, brought out of ourselves, but only wants our fullest personal good. That our universe is not indifferent to our suffering, our struggles, There's somebody who wants our fullest good. And the hinge of the metaphor is right here. By themselves, the passions aren't going to get us there. And just to say, we can't do this ourselves. Christian philosophers worked this out systematically 1,700 years ago, and the pagans did it before them. It's easy to underestimate how we need outside help. That what we call grace is what makes this happy life not just most possible, but it's a shortcut. It's a quick way to it. The author G.K. Chesterton said something I think is true today, in even less religious world than he lived in, that the easiest Christian doctrine to verify is original sin. You heard that before? Yeah. Look around. Anybody in question that we're in a fallen world? This is not controversial. We are in a world that's tainted by, boxed in places by choices people have made. And closer to home, the effects of personal sin. Even among baptized, our lives are affected by sinful decisions we've made, others have made. That's not abstract either. I don't know what everybody's deal is, but I'm absolutely sure that that's true. Outside us. All this flavors, then, our passions in a way that they themselves, there's kind of a suspicion that we should have toward them. Not a suspicion like looking askance, but a suspicion, a willingness to question. Why am I motivated by this or that? But that's not a stopping point. It's a place to start. What we call grace is always on offer. It's a way to give us help in channeling these passions. In the Catholic theological tradition, we know maybe the infused virtues. We've talked about this at Blessed Sacrament. Faith, hope, and love. The greatest is love. Our school theme this year is rooted in love. That's why it's especially appropriate. All the virtues are rooted in love. But if those are there, then all the other virtues are there too. Things that aren't, necessarily, the theological virtues. I think we hear that in a secular setting, and it gets kind of brushed aside. But someone who's really temperate, self-controlled, that doesn't get brushed aside anywhere you go. Courage, someone with courage that undermines all fear, sadness, somebody radiant in courage, that's very attractive. Justice, with the virtue of justice, a steadfast, almost supernaturally nuanced sense of right and wrong, with determination to act justly, that's attractive. And prudence, a kind of sixth sense. It's not like we kind of get the idea of a kind of namby-pamby prudence. We're talking about a kind of sixth sense that helps us navigate complex day-to-day life. That's something, no matter where you go, all these virtues, everybody recognizes, no matter the faith tradition. That's how a compelling person lives. And through that lens, I'm presenting what the church proposes, that the sacraments that Jesus left, in a weird way, have the capacity to send those virtues. That he's willing to give these virtues to us by opening us to God. That's confession, a place where distortions, obstacles to grace and virtue, that they're cleared away. That's the Mass, where we're open to abundant outflow of grace in the Word of God. Presence of the assembled body of Christ, congregation. That's the person of the priest. Most privileged in the Eucharist. There's so much grace available at the Mass. This, by the way, is why the church says go to Mass on Sundays. It's not an authority, obedience thing. It's the church knowing life is hard, wanting us to be more open to the grace on offer. Help us be attuned to the presence of God anywhere, more receptiveness to those gifts of virtue He has to give us, with this infused virtue of love at the center. Always for the sake of other as other. That's love as a virtue. If we ask for it for the sake of building up others, it's a gift that God's always willing to give. And true love contains, again, all those other virtues. It's not pie in the sky. This is very concrete. It's something we can trust, that any sorrow can be escaped or redeemed. I fell in this little way, this big way, but next time I won't. God's going to help me. That help trickles all the way down, even to the level of the passions. So if we see each passion through the lens of how grace can bring virtue to a situation, then, and this is maybe a piece, each passion itself is open to that fuel that makes virtue possible. Every little tug of our heart this way or that, there's a map back to the source of life if we know how to navigate it. We can do something sometime on the virtues, put more meat on this if you want, but just to start, again, love as the good of other as other, applying it to the passions. So just, for example, desire and aversion, anytime we experience these, we can practice, we can stop. Again, we experience these, but we're not trapped by them, so we can stop. Step back and say, okay, so I'm drawn by something right now. I'm repelled by something. What am I drawn toward? What am I repelled by? What's the object of my desire, of my aversion? And we can pray, love be sent in, whatever form that looks like. I'd say, send me more love, Lord. Help me to see, am I doing the most loving thing right now? And sift through that. Is the thing that I desire most, is fulfilling that desire the most loving thing I can do in this situation? Could it be that something I'm averse to is the most loving thing I can do? And even if we're not sure, it's always appropriate. Again, God always answers this. It's always appropriate to ask for more love to be sent so we can love better and then turn that passion outward so that it builds up the world around us. We can do this with any passion. Take a look at, get a better sense of what's moving us. It might feel like we don't have freedom in this or that situation, but again, we do. To the extent we have freedom, that's the extent that we're open to God's help. It gives us a sense for the radicality that we have of freedom for good, that we're going to have what we need to control our passions. It's not just something that we get in a religious context. This is 12-step stuff. You want to get a practical sense of grace, talk about anybody who's been in the 12-step program. Maybe a different language. Some things, aren't, one-to-one. But first step is surrendering to a higher power. And folks, in a 12-step program, people who have found themselves in a hopeless situation with regard to passions, desires, they've found hope. There's so many people who've found hope, and the first step in that, it's the same thing, surrendering to a power higher than ourselves. To anybody not Catholic, anybody we say out here, this will sound stark, but we need to make the claim. What we're saying is the church has, it's an encouraging thing, a full sense, always in need of more development for sure, but the fullest sense we'll get anywhere of not just what, but who that higher power is, the personality of this higher power. In responding to God's call to turn toward Him, having a sense of how we're moved, our passions can be controlled much quicker, much more surely. It's His strength, His goodness we're relying on. That's what gives us hands strong enough to grip and steer these reins. So as we turn toward home, we might think, you might be thinking, okay, sure, Father, that sounds great, but that's a long way off for me. In a way, that's true. It's a long way for me too, but in a way it's not. Because there's a way, get this, that we couldn't ask for the fix to be closer than it is, whatever we're struggling with. I'm telling you, the power to do this is as close as we want it to be. That's the good news about God, who knows the subtlety of the human heart. It's right there. He's made us, God has, to be fully free, to respond in all goodness to the things He gives. He's reaching down at every second, every moment, hoping that we'll just take His hand up, help us move in the right direction. It's a radical freedom that's on offer, and the church is delegated to spread that freedom, spread the news of that freedom. You tell me if we're in a world where bondage to the passions is a real widespread thing. Jesus isn't the liberator who we're waiting for in an abstract way. He's the liberator. He's the one who died, we believe, to give us the grace to get us out, and He's ready to liberate everybody. So what if we listen to the advice of St. Paul? Everybody did in Romans 12 with regard to the passions. Love what is good, be repulsed by evil, averse to misuse of whatever gift. We can develop the passions, especially to love what is good, not by half measures, but have will and conscience rightly formed. Fan into flame our desires for the good. This is battling media addiction, distress from it like we talked, social unrest, other kinds of addiction struggles that are harmful to the person, overwhelmed by fast changes in the world. Maybe it's just worry. I shouldn't say just worry. Worry is oppressive. Depression, all sorts of things, issues for grade school, high school, college students. Anybody, by harnessing the passions, we're no longer driven by these things. We're given the strength and grace to form and direct them, maybe fix them. So no matter where anybody is, there's a place to start. Asking for insight on things to pull back from. That's a good start. Just observing our lives, that's a good thing. Taking a kind of leap. A comfort with the knowledge that we have help if we want it. For Christians, we know who to ask for help. We can set aside more time to ask Him. Thank Him, that's appropriate, for the help already given. Recognizing all the help we're given. Prayer is great. There are other means to help. Maybe jumpstart for Catholics with resolution to more frequent confession. Continue to move those obstacles. Mass attendance, reflection, meditation. In all of these, the key is recognizing the feelings we experience, and then waiting. And in that waiting, refusing to be mastered by them. Even when we want to move, and in that waiting, reaching out spiritually, whatever that looks like, for help. In the Advent season, waiting for Christmas, particularly appropriate. Have our lives blessed by the coming of the one who wants to help us so much. Start to have our lives more marked by Beatitude that we're talking about, happiness, where people can look at us and say, blessed, happy are we. So that's about all we got in terms of concrete program. We can just spend the rest of the time. Any questions, thoughts, whatever that looks like, that's just fine. I can even put this on, walk around, and project anything that we have. So thanks, everybody. Anybody have questions, thoughts, anything like that? We went over a lot. Yeah, what's up? You there?
I was trying to apply what you said. I guess we were kind of thinking about our own personal, maybe what our wants are, whether we want Doritos, don't want
so I think there's things where it's okay, so, and I don't know what that looks like for you. It's a very personal thing. It's the fruit of prayer. And so I think really this is a big plug to say we're learning to turn with our feelings, because sometimes we don't know what to pray about, but sometimes we're not so attentive to the things that distress us, that move us. And so if you say, okay, so I am disturbed by this or that or the other thing, am I bringing it to prayer? And how do I bring it to prayer and say, okay, Lord, I'm upset by this. How do I incorporate this? How do I move with this? Am I praying? Am I calling my congressman? Am I organizing the diaper drive? Am I going to Planned Parenthood and praying? Am I whatever that looks like? Does that kind of answer what you're talking about? Anger is appropriate. Anger is kind, in some ways, the less specific version of anger is the engine. In the way that, like, you're upset, and so you're kind of moved to do something. There's a version of anger that can turn sour, where it overflows its banks, and where it's not helpful. And so the trick is to keep that anger so that you're only doing productive things, virtuous things that are in accord with your emotional flourishing, in accord with what God wants. Does that make sense? Gotcha. Well, no.
This is a little along with the
So maybe I'll just like kind of say generally that the church has a lot. Ultimately, any teaching on sexuality like we're talking about, the reason would be rooted in this desire to have everybody accessible to, and receptive, mostly in the biggest way possible to all the help that God has to give, and saying that there is a way because these desires are so able to kind of move somebody this way. These are some of the biggest, most difficult ways of getting us out of whack, where it can be hard to get back in. And there are a lot of societal ills that come with that. You talked about one, a lot of stuff on the internet's there, a lot of all this stuff. You're exactly right. And so I can maybe direct you. I gave a version of this talk. I don't know what the best way to do that is. But it just to say that there is a lot there, and there's a lot to say about that specific issue especially. And anybody would be interested in talking about that, maybe we could do that another time.
I guess I would just add that I think it's very important that discussion happen very early stage. Because a lot of PTs, teens are really involved.
I think you're absolutely right. You are absolutely right.
So it needs to happen in church.
I think you're right about that too.
Well, thank you.
Regine?
Is the terminology that you used of the passions and kind of the list of them, is that something that comes from Thomas Aquinas, or is there was there an earlier
Who
source?
used it first?
Yeah, kind of.
That's Aristotle's taxonomy first. Thomas Aquinas used it. He thought it made a lot of sense, and he spelled some things out additionally. Obviously, the whole grace and God piece, that was something he synthesized and brought in.
Okay, thanks.
Did that answer your question? Yeah.
Just thinking on the analogy of like water, sometimes when I think of passion, it's sort of like a surface level waves and a lot happening in that. I don't even know exactly what I'm asking, but this idea of being going deeper, not avoiding all of that, but I'm just curious what the thought is about, like in a spiritual sense, sort of not avoiding the passions, but kind of transcending that or getting to even a deeper level where you're not being moved by all of those different forces, if that makes sense.
Yeah. The idea in some ways, so like that's a helpful image, your passion where there are waves moving, where a lot of the power, the water underneath, there's a lot of that moving. But there's a way to kind of sink below that. That's the kind of stepping back. So just to use this image, kind of stepping back, getting below the wave, taking some breaths and say, okay, I'm being moved by this direction, being moved by this
You know, I've never seen that movie, but
I started watching it one night again, and I'm like, how did I sit through this when I was a teenager?
I never saw it, but Dennis Hopper creeps me out. I've seen him in other stuff, and it's like,
Yeah, no, as a teenager, it was such a big thing. Gosh, this is really.
well, have a good night. I'll see you Tuesday, so to speak.
I think so, yeah. A couple of people aren't coming, but you probably don't.
I don't, but I just show up.
Yeah, I think the guys are just out of town and running over the airport. Should be made a way to do it. Well, next, we're done. Take care, Mike. Get older, it's like. Yeah, it has to be second to play. I don't know who's playing, but maybe.
There might be one.
They usually do Sunday afternoon. Sunday afternoon. Monday night.